Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, wherever you may be. Here we are once again with some yarn hook, and pen and paper. I'm using a 4mm G hook because the yarn I'm using is a DK or an 8-ply or a light 3. I knew I'd remember what it was, or 3 weight. Okay, so we've done our slip knot. And we're just gonna go over that again. So our slip knot is wrapping around our fingers. Let's see if we can come out a little bit. Wrapping around our 2 fingers, up, grab that, pull it through, and we have our slip knot. If you need to revise how you do your slip knots, just go back to the previous video and have a look. Okay, so now we need to determine whether we're going to do individual squares with each of these samples, or are we going to make a scarf and just go as we change the stitch type so that it's like a sampler scarf almost. Or you could just as equally make squares and later sew them together or crochet them together, which is my preference, to make a baby blanket or even bigger blanket depending on how many squares you decide to make. Now I was going to do a scarf, but I think if I make crochet squares, that I will be able to then, using those squares, show how to join them and that sort of thing. So let's do this. Hang on, let's have a look at our ruler. How long should we make a square for a blanket? Probably don't want it any wider than 12 centimeters, or what's that, 5 inches? 5 inches. I think that's probably a good width for a square, because you're also going to have to do, obviously, to make it square, you're going to have to do that many rows as well. Maybe we can bring it back to 4, because we don't want to be, bogged down doing loads and loads of rows. And small though. Oh, it's so hard to decide. You decide which you prefer. I might go with the 5 after all, just simply because they're bigger squares, and therefore you're not going to need as many. Alright, so let's do our slip knots. Slip knots. Let's do our chains so that they equal the length that we want them to be, and then but we'll count them as we go, so we know how many slip knots. Sorry, I keep saying slip knots. How many chain we need. So, if you remember, a chain for the pencil grip, which I'm not. Which is not my go-to hold, is grab it and pull it through. Okay, and we grab it and pull it through. Grab it and pull it through. And I'm twisting the hook as I go and pulling it through. And then returning it to an upright, taking it back to pick up the yarn and pulling it through. For those who are doing or want to do the knife hold, we just... Now you might look at this and think, oh, the knife hold is easier. Don't go by what I'm necessarily doing, because, as I say, the pencil grip is not my go-to grip. It's not one I usually use, so if you're going to look at this and think, oh, the knife hold is easier, it may be for me, but it may not necessarily be for you. Okay, we're getting there. Once I got there, I will count how many chains, and then I will, did I do that right? That one's a bit big. I'm going to go back to that one because I think that was a bit loose, that one. And in fact, so was the one before it. Wow, that was very loose as well. Okay, we'll go back to here. Remember, we don't want to make these too tight or too loose. We want to be able to go into the back bump they all produce. Because today we're going to do our first stitch. I need to take a couple off to get the length I need. Yep. Okay, so let's count. We want to count with our V's at the front. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 and 18. So I'm just going to write that number down and just circle it, and I'm just going to put chain. So I know that that's 18 chain. Okay. Now, when you're doing single crochet, these are our first stitches. We are going to do them into the back bumps. We will do any and all of our stitches into the back bumps. Notably, this stitch does not count. The loop that is on your knit hook does not count when a pattern says to you, work into the second chain from the hook. You don't count this one. You turn over and you count the back bumps. And you can see there's a back bump there, which would be very hard to get into. And there's our second back bump. Or if you want to count the chains, there's one chain there and there's another chain there. So that's one thing counted into that. I've got one chain there, so I am one chain there. So for a single crochet, you go in and you pick up the back bump. You pick up a thread and pull it through the back bump. Then you've got 2 loops and you pull through both. I'm going to bring that in. Okay, here's our back bump. You can see them all lined up here. We are going into these back bumps. So we go into the back bump. And you might need to use your finger now to just slip the back bump on. Okay, I'm gonna pick up the yarn and bring it through the loop, the back bump, and then we're going to loop over again and pull it through. That's 2 single crochets we've done. And you can count the single crochets by looking at the top. And you will see at the top here, there are V's. A V there, that's 1 single crochet, and a V here, that's your second single crochet. And at the end, because you basically skipped a couple of chain in order to start, that sort of becomes an additional stitch. But in this case, we're not going to count it as a stitch. Again, it's just one of the things that they will tell you when you're crocheting. So, into our next back bump. So I often find the easiest way to find the back bump if you're having trouble is you go through these 2 stitches, and then using your hook, you turn your hook this way, and then you pick up the middle thread. So there's like 3 threads there. Now you can loop over like this if you like and bring the yarn through. That is called, that's really a different method. It will produce a slightly different looking stitch, but all in all, if you are consistent and that's the way you do it, it's not going to matter. And if you're making amigurumi, you probably do want to grab the stitch that way because it makes it a little bit tighter, and so you're less likely to see the stuffing. But if you're doing just normal single crochet, you would grab it like that, bring it through the loop, and you've got 2. Here's our next bump. And if you look at the bottom, you will see there's also a row of bees, because that's what we're leaving behind. We're not using these stitches because we're using that middle back bump. So if you look at it like this, there's 3 threads, 1, 2, 3. And we want to pick up that middle one. And when you look at it side on, you can see that it's actually sticking up, and that there's a little gap there, and that's where we're going into. So single crochet into the hook, bring your thread through, and then bring through both loops on your hook. This is also known as a double crochet in the UK. So, into our back bump again, grab the thread, the working thread, pull it through, 2 loops, and pull the yarn through both. And I'm tensioning my yarn in this way. You tension it however you feel necessary. You want enough tension on it so that the thread is not saggy like this. You want it to be straight but not terribly taut, because the tighter it is, the tighter this bit gets and the harder this gets to move. So you just really want it just straight enough that you can grab it. But it doesn't need to be, tight straight. It just needs to be straight enough so that it's easy to grab. If you had it all loopy, you're going to find it hard to sort of get in there and get your hook up, and then your tension will be a bit off. So, into our back bump. Oops, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky. And grab the loop, pull it through, 2 loops on the hook. Now you will notice that I take my thumb and middle finger, and I hold it there when I do the last pull through. And that again is to do with tension, because if you pull too tight here, you're going to end up with a really big gap at the bottom. I'll show you what I mean. So if I go through like that and pull through and don't grab it, and then just pull through, see how big my hole is now? And it makes the next bump really, really hard and tiny. It's not this one, that's not my next bump. My next bump is actually shrunk and hidden because I've pulled on this thread too much and it shrunk the back bump. So we undo that, you will see what I mean. Alright, so we go into the bump, grab our yarn, pull it through, then hold the base as you finish the stitch. And it's a little bit bigger there because it's been stretched where I stretched it before. Into the back bump. Now you want to be careful with splitting yarn. Now see, I picked up just one thread from the V at the back. Now in the grand scheme of things, well, this is not going to ruin your project. It's not going to, you know, make it look horrible or anything like that. But it might cause you, you know, a few issues later on. So if you can just pull your needle out, your hook out, sorry, and try it again, because you don't want to split the yarn if at all possible. And gripping here helps you keep a nice even tension. Now you can see the base is very neat. It's all V's. The top is very neat. It's all V's. And you've got all these single crochets going across. So I'm just going to finish this row of V's with, row of single crochet with you watching. And I'm going to do it in silence. Oops, I keep going under when I should be doing that way because I do amigurumi and I get confused. But it doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So sometimes I use my thumb to push the middle bump on, sometimes not. And this is our last one. Okay, and that's the end of our row. So what do we do now? Well, we've successfully made a row of single crochet, which we're going to turn into a square. Now, keeping straight edges on your crochet can be a little tricky, but once you sort of, you know, get it, you'll get it and you'll be able to do straight edges all the time. Now, hang on, I've got a bit of a knot forming. Come on, out you come, little knot. All right, okay, so first thing you need to do is count your stitches. Now you did 18 chain, but you didn't start in the first chain. I find the best way to count your stitch, now you can count on the side, and you can see them on the side if you like. I find the easiest way to find them is on the top. Each V is a stitch. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So it's one less than the chain you produced. And that's quite normal if you're going to be, working into the second, in this case we worked into the second back bump from the hook because we're doing single crochets which are very tiny. If we were doing a really big stitch, we would work in, the fourth or fifth back bump from the hook. But we'll get to that later on when we do bigger stitches. Okay, so, and I'm doing this through my camera, so that might be why I seem to be a little bit off sometimes and keep missing the thread. So we do chain 1. Now, this does not count as a stitch. The idea of this chain 1 is purely just to give you some height so that your first single crochet doesn't look sort of squished, okay? And then we're going to turn the work, and I always turn the work, which way is that, clockwise, so that my working thread is at the back again, okay? And here's my starting point. I'm going to go into each of these stitches, and I know where a stitch is because each stitch has a V. So the first stitch, and conveniently there's a little hole there for me to see that there's a stitch. I'm going to go into there and come out the other side. Oops. I'm picking up 2 threads, a front loop and a back loop of the V. Okay, that's picking up, it's going into the stitch. I'm going to pick up my yarn, I'm going to pull it through just like I was doing on the chain base, and then pull it through again. First stitch. Now also doing this little chain here to give you a bit of height helps produce the straighter edge. If you just went straight in and did a single crochet, not only would it get a little bit sort of squished on one side and would not be as visible or as noticeable when you're crocheting, you would, you'd also get not such a neat edge. So looking across here, can you see where we need to go? Let me show you. There's a stitch there. We look at the top. If you ever get lost, just look at the top. Find the V and then put your hook through that V, and always put it through the V and pick up only those 2 stitches. And if you put it through the V and pick up only those 2 stitches, you're going to have gone through the correct hole. And then you're going to grab your yarn, you're going to pull it through that hole, and then you're going to pull through the 2 loops. Now you can sort of you should really start to see where you've got to go, right into here. If you ever have any doubt, look at the top. You have a front loop and you have a back loop. You don't have any other loops. You know you're in the stitch and you know you're in the right spot. So grab that yarn and pull it through. And then pull through 2. So let's do that again. Front loop, back loop. Don't let the splitting yarn trick you. You've gone into the right spot. Grab that thread, pull it through, then pull through both. Go again into both. First, front loop, back loop, pull through. Wow, cockatoos I think they were. Okay, got a few more stitches here to go. Now you want to end up with the same number of stitches. So I'm just going to keep going until I get to the end. And then I'm going to show you how we finish it off. So I'm just going to go through. And we're just going to go, and I'm going to do it in silence so you can watch. You can speed this bit up or you can slow it down further if you wish to. Up to you. Pulled that through the wrong way, I think, sorry. Okay, so down to our last two stitches. Go through, grab the thread. One. Now this one is always might always look a little bit tricky because it does get sort of a little bit lost into that chain that we made to start a row. But it's still there, still going into that V. It's just that you might not be able to find the hole that easily. So use your hook that you've got to pick up the first leg, the front loop, and then the back loop. So it might be a little bit tighter than the other stitches. And grab your thread, pull it through both. Oops, grab your yarn and pull it through. Now, we'll make sure that we've got 17 stitches. So let's go back down. And we're going to count our chains, our V's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. perfect. I would suggest you do that each and every row until you know that you are going into the correct spots, because it is very easy to go into the end here when you don't need to. It's also very easy to not go into this last stitch because you just don't see it very clearly. So always count your stitches as you go. And then it's just a matter of chaining one again, turning your work again, and doing it all over. Okay, and you can see the gaps where you've got to go in. You can still see the V's. And it gets just that little bit easier. And you don't, once you're sort of doing this after a while, you don't always have to sort of grip to see, you know, to stop the stitch from stretching, because it's not always going to stretch. Once you've sort of got a few rows under your belt, it's not going to stretch. So you can move a little bit quicker if you're capable to. Whoops, I keep going around it the wrong way because I'm thinking amigurumi. If I've done that at any stage, it's not a huge deal. It's not going to change the appearance of the overall project or the overall stitch. And mistakes are going to be made. Nobody is perfect. Now I didn't go into both of the stitches there, so because I am I'm working through the camera literally. I'm not looking at my hands and stitches, I'm looking at my hands and stitches on the camera. So yeah. But I knew then that I had not done the right thing, because one, I could feel that it was pretty loose because I'd only gone through the front loop. And I could feel it was a bit looser, and the hole was a bit bigger, and it just didn't seem right. So I knew I'd done something wrong. So I just pull out my hook and we try again. And I've got my 2 loops again, my front and back, and continue on. Now I've done the cast on for the chain of 18, and I'm doing sorry, I keep going like this because I'm used to doing some amigurumi, and when you do it like that, you end up with a tighter stitch, and we don't want that necessarily for our blanket. If we're doing squares for blankets, you might decide you just want to do a scarf. So I apologize again. Now, one last thing I want to show you before we stop. Almost did it again. Oh, we're going to go into that last V. So we're going to see, it's a bit tricky, so we're going to get that first loop and then our second loop, pull up our thread and bring it through. And when you look, you should see a really nice straight edge, and at the other end will also be a straight edge. It will curl a little bit, and that's partly because if your tension is increasing, it can also just be a bit of the nature of the stitch. But as you increase the length, the curl will go away. So, how do we draw this? How do we draw what we've just done? Well, in crochet, they have symbols, and each symbol represents a stitch. A dot like that is classed as a slip stitch or slip knot. Okay, I'm going to turn this on the side. Once again, I'm working through the paper, through the camera, so it might be a bit tricky for me. But I'm going to try and go along the line, and we're going to do 18 oblongs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is, I'm going to do over. I'm going to look over the camera. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Now, before we do the 18th, as we know, when we started working, we worked into our second loop. The 18th stitch sort of comes up on the side of our work. I can find the beginning. When we did that first single crochet, we skipped one chain and we went into the second chain. That one chain is represented like this, and that one's just there giving a bit of height to the work. As I explained, when we do a chain at the end of each row, is to give a bit of height and create a straight edge for our work. So we put that last stitch just on it can be on an angle, or it can be straight up, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so I'll just show you that. So we've done 18, we've done a slip knot, and then we've done 17 chain, and the 18th is on the end. These represent the chains. Now, how do we write a single crochet? I knew I'd think of it eventually, or a double crochet in the UK. That is represented, and I'm going to do it in a different color. That is represented by a small plus. This is a single crochet, and each single crochet is sitting on top of the chain it went into. So we know there will be 17 when we get to the end. Okay, so that's what we actually, our first row. So that's what it looks like in drawing form, in graph form. So then, what did we do? We did another chain, just for height. I'm going to do a different color, so it's easier to see. Come on, color. Right, so this we could label as in black as a chain row, but this, the red row, is row 1. And we work row 1 from right to left. Row 2, which I am going to do in green, is worked. We worked from left to right. So we did our chain, we turned, and then we put a single crochet into every single crochet all the way across. Again, this gives us the pattern that we formed in graph form. We get to the end. Let's count our stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. We did a chain and we turned and we went back again, and that becomes our 3rd row, because we did 3 rows, if you remember rightly. Might not be able to see them so clearly now, but we did do 3 rows. Once again, we just do 1 single crochet into the single crochet, and we just draw this simply by putting a single crochet above a single crochet below, and that indicates that this single crochet was worked into this single crochet, which was worked into this single crochet, which is worked into this chain. Now this is the simplest of starts for our chain, our graph writing, but there you have it. Let's just get the whole picture. This enables you to look at your work, or you can look at the graph and you can know that, yeah, okay, that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a single crochet into a single crochet. I mean, you're not going to, admittedly, you're not necessarily going to forget that at this stage, but it's always useful to be able to write a graph, to be able to understand the graph, so that you can later read the graph. So if I handed this to you, you would know, okay, that's a single crochet. You would know these are chains. You would know that that's a slip knot. So I'm going to do my slip knot. I'm going to do all these chain, and you can count the chain, and then you can count the single crochet, and you could actually, without me telling you how many chains to start off with or how many stitches to start off with, you could look at this as someone who is able to read a graph and know where to go, you know what to do. And like I say, I've written up the top there 18 chain, which I don't need to worry about anymore because it's actually in my pattern. Okay, so that was the single crochet. Please rewind it and, you know, slow it down, fast, speed it up, do whatever you need to do to get this. And remember, these are lessons for people who have never picked up a hook or who have only just picked up a hook. So if you're finding this format a little bit too simplified for you, either speed it up or perhaps have a look at some other beginner tutorials which perhaps not so detailed because you know what you're doing or you've done it before. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. That's lesson 2, I think. I hope I got that right. And I'll come back another time and we'll work on half double crochets, or as the UK would call them, half double trebles. Okay, take care everybody. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.